After 14 months in my guest room, my sister introduced me at her engagement dinner as the woman I rent from. She said it lightly, but then she watched my face as if my next sentence would decide whether the story survived. I reached into my purse, took out Claire's spare car key on the little ring she had given me for wedding errands, and laid it beside her water glass. "We'll choose a move-out date when we get home," I said. The room did not go silent. That would have been easier. A waiter was setting down bread, Daniel's father was asking someone to pass the butter, and Claire's new mother-in-law-to-be was still smiling at me with the polite interest people give a stranger who has been unexpectedly included. Only the four of us nearest the center of the table understood that something had shifted. Claire closed her fingers around the key. "Ruth," she whispered. I picked up my napkin. "Not here." Daniel looked from her hand to me. He did not ask a question. Not yet. Claire had told me before dinner that Daniel's parents knew she had rented a room while she got back on her feet. She had not told me that the room had apparently lost its place inside my house, or that I had lost my place inside her family. Until she spoke those 8 words, I had assumed she was protecting the details of her divorce. Sitting there, I understood that privacy was not what she wanted from me. She wanted my silence to make a different relationship seem true. Claire had never paid me rent. I had given my sister a room because she needed one. What I did not understand was why she still needed the rental story badly enough to watch me disappear inside it. I stayed through dinner. I did not tell Daniel's parents that Claire had never paid me rent. I did not describe the February night she had arrived with 2 suitcases, a lamp wrapped in a bath towel, and a face so tired that I had put clean sheets on the bed, while she stood in the doorway holding her coat closed. Those facts belonged to a private season of her life. I did not need to use them as weapons, simply because she had used my kindness as camouflage. But I also did not pick the key back up. For the rest of the meal, Claire was brighter than usual. She told a story about meeting Daniel at a community lecture. She praised the restaurant. She asked his mother about flowers. Whenever the conversation came near housing, she guided it somewhere else. I watched her do it with the smoothness of someone who had practiced alone. Daniel did not join in. Once, when Claire said she had been lucky to find a flexible arrangement, he looked at me. I buttered a piece of bread I no longer wanted. In the parking lot, Claire caught my sleeve. "You made that sound like I'm being thrown out." "You aren't." "Then why say it at all?" Daniel stood a few yards away beside his car. He was close enough to see us, not close enough to hear every word. "Because you called me the woman you rent from." Claire glanced toward him. "Can we please do this at home?" "That is exactly what I said." We drove back separately. By the time I reached my house in Ashford, the porch light had drawn moths to the glass, and Claire was waiting in the kitchen with both hands flat on the counter. She had beaten me there by 5 minutes. Her purse was still over one shoulder. "I panicked," she said. I hung my jacket in the front closet. "About what?" "About explaining everything. You could have said I was your sister. Then they would ask why I live with you. You could have said you needed a place after the divorce. You don't understand Daniel's parents. I met them tonight. For 2 hours. I filled the kettle because my hands needed an ordinary job. The kitchen had always helped me think. It was a narrow room with cream cabinets and a square of darker floor where a breakfast table had stood before I replaced it with a smaller one. Claire had spent 14 months entering that room without knocking, opening the refrigerator, leaving her coffee cup beside the sink. None of that had bothered me. The sentence at the restaurant had. "Did you tell Daniel I was your landlord?" I asked. She hesitated. "I told him I rented a room from someone who used to manage apartments." "Someone?" I didn't say we weren't related. You removed the part that says we are. The kettle clicked off. I poured water over a tea bag and left hers on the counter because I no longer knew whether making it for her would be kindness or habit. Claire dropped her purse on a chair. What do you want me to do? Call his parents tonight and announce that I'm 46 years old and living in my sister's spare room? No. Tonight, I want us to choose a date. She stared at me. You're serious? 6 weeks from Saturday. Her face changed then, not into fear exactly. Claire had a full-time job at a dental supply office, savings she guarded carefully, and a list of studio apartments she had been browsing for months. What I saw was the shock of a door becoming a door again after she had come to think of it as open air. 6 weeks, she repeated. You'll use the room normally until then. I won't move your belongings. I won't change a lock. You can choose a studio, or you and Daniel can decide something together, or you can choose another arrangement. That part is yours. You make it sound so official. I'm trying to make it clear. Because I used the wrong word at dinner? Because you used the word you have been using with the man you plan to marry. You turned my help into a transaction so you would not have to call it help. And you turned me into a stranger so you would not have to call me your sister. She looked toward the hallway. The guest room door was partly open. A sleeve of one of her blouses hung from the knob where she had left it to steam in the morning shower. I buy groceries, she said, sometimes. I contribute, sometimes. You do not pay rent, Claire. You never have. That was the first small truth we put back in its proper room. It did not solve anything. It did make the next question unavoidable. If she had needed the lie only while she lived with me, why did she look more frightened by the truth than by moving out? Claire slept behind the guest room door that night. I slept badly in the room across the hall and remembered the night she came. It had been early February, 14 months before the engagement dinner. There was old snow along my driveway, gray at the edges, and Claire called from a gas station 6 miles away because she did not trust herself to keep driving. Her divorce had become final that afternoon. She had known it was coming, but the clerk's stamp had made the end feel different. When I pulled in, she was sitting in her car with the heat running. 2 suitcases stood in the back seat. A floor lamp lay across them, its shade wrapped in one of her bath towels. I only need a few weeks, she told me. You need tonight first. At home, I moved my sewing machine off the table by the guest room window. I stacked 3 library books on the reading chair, then carried them to my bedroom. The room had never been fancy. It held a narrow daybed, a pine dresser, the chair, and enough clear floor for me to spread fabric when I was cutting a long scene. I liked to sit there in the late afternoon because the window faced west. Claire stood at the threshold while I found clean sheets. I can pay something, she said. You can buy groceries when you feel steady. I'm not charging my sister to sleep. She began to cry then, quietly and angrily, as if the tears were another thing the divorce had taken without asking. I held her in the hallway. She had rested her forehead against my shoulder and said, I don't know what I would do without you. I had not stored that sentence for later use. Love does not need an account book. I remembered it only because the woman at the dinner table had spoken as though no sister had been present in that hallway. The first few weeks went as we both expected. Claire left for work at 7:30. I was still adjusting to retirement after 32 years managing apartment buildings, so I woke early too. We drank coffee in the kitchen. She bought milk, eggs, and whatever fruit looked least tired at the grocery store. I cooked most evenings because I was already cooking. She washed dishes when she remembered. We never wrote rules. That was my first mistake, though not because a written page would have saved us. I had spent a career explaining doors, deposits, repair schedules, and notice periods to adults. At home, I wanted generosity to feel softer than administration. I thought the word sister would hold what paper did not. By April, Claire was laughing again. By June, she had stopped checking apartment listings every night. In July, she met Daniel at a lecture the public library held on restoring old neighborhood houses. He taught history at the community college and had the patient habit of considering a question before answering it. The first time he picked Claire up, she met him on the porch. "Aren't you going to introduce us?" I asked through the screen door. Claire opened it halfway. "Daniel, this is Ruth. Ruth, Daniel." He shook my hand. "Claire says you know more about buildings than anyone in Ashford." "Only the ones that leaked," I said. Claire laughed a little too quickly. "Ruth used to manage apartments." She did not say sister. I noticed, but the omission seemed small enough to step over. People reveal family in their own time, I told myself. Later came my place, when Daniel dropped her off. Then, the room I found after everything happened. Once, at the dining table, Daniel asked whether the rent increases around town had affected her. Claire said, "My arrangement is flexible." I was carrying a bowl from the kitchen. I felt the sentence brush past me, but I set the bowl down and asked Daniel if he wanted salad. That is how a false room gets built. Not with one wall, but with small boards handed over one at a time. I understood some of Claire's shame. Our mother had admired self-sufficiency in the way some people admire polished silver, mostly when visitors could see it. After Claire's divorce, she could not bear anyone looking at her with concern. She returned gifts that seemed too expensive. She changed the subject when friends asked where she was living. If someone praised her resilience, she stood straighter. Understanding was not the same as agreeing. I lost sight of that for a while. When Daniel proposed in January, Claire came through my front door holding out her left hand. I screamed. We hugged in the hallway. I opened the sparkling cider I kept for no particular occasion, and the three of us sat in the kitchen until nearly midnight. Daniel said, "We want something simple." Claire said, "Simple but beautiful." Within a week, Simple had a guest list of 96. I had offered to help with addresses. That became correcting the addresses, comparing two caterers, calling about chair rentals, assembling sample favors, reminding Claire when deposits were due, and picking up paper swatches because the stationer closed before she left work. That was why I had her spare car key. Some errands required moving her car from the office lot so she could take mine to an appointment, and Claire put the key on a plain metal ring she called our wedding errand ring. I did not mind the tasks at first. I made a small planning space at one end of my dining table. Vendor cards went into a green folder. Addresses stayed in a file on my laptop. Claire brought home ribbon and spread it across the surface where my fabric used to lie. Daniel often stopped by after class. He saw me at the table with a phone beside one hand and a list beside the other. "You two make quite a team," he once said. Claire kissed the top of my head. "Ruth likes a project." That was true. It was also incomplete. After the engagement dinner, I sat at that table and prepared the handover. I did not delete a line. I put the caterer quotes in one document, the corrected addresses in another, and the favor instructions in a third. I included the names of the people I had spoken with and the dates by which Claire and Daniel needed to decide. The next evening, I asked Claire to sit down. "I sent you everything," I said. She opened her email on her phone. "Why?" "Because I'm done coordinating." "You said you would help." "I did help. The work I completed is yours. I'm not taking on more." "So now you're punishing the wedding?" "The wedding is not a person. You and Daniel can plan it." She scrolled through the files. "The stationer still needs final numbers." "That is in the notes." "And the favor boxes?" "There are 40 assembled in the hall closet. Take them when you move. The rest are yours to finish or change." Claire set the phone down. Family doesn't stop helping over one awkward introduction. Family also doesn't have to be renamed in exchange for helping. She pushed her chair back. You keep making it sound deliberate. Was it? She did not answer. She left the dining room and closed the guest room door. A minute later, she opened it again and took the green vendor folder from the table. That week, I also stopped folding the clothes she left in the dryer. I cooked for myself and told her when there were leftovers, but I did not plan around the hour she came home. When she texted that she had forgotten her lunch, I replied that the container was on the second shelf. I did not drive it across town. These were not punishments. They were small services I had provided so consistently that both of us had stopped seeing the moment I chose them. Once I began choosing again, the house sounded different. The washer stopped running after I went to bed. The dining table stayed clear for an entire afternoon. Claire moved through the rooms with an alertness I had not seen since her first month there. Daniel came to my porch 9 days after the dinner. He called first. I appreciated that. "Could I ask you 2 questions?" he said when I opened the door. "You can ask." He did not come inside. The spring air was mild, and we sat in the 2 metal chairs on the porch. Across the street, my neighbor was edging his lawn in precise green strips. Daniel rested his forearms on his knees. "Did Claire pay you rent?" "No." He nodded once. "Did she move in after the divorce?" "Yes." "Why is she moving now?" "That is a third question." He almost smiled, then did not. "Fair." I looked through the screen door toward the hallway. Claire was at work. Her shoes were lined under the bench inside, 4 pairs where I had once kept a basket of winter scarves. "She is moving because I offered my sister a room," I said. "I did not offer to become a stranger in the story of that room." Daniel waited. "That is all I'm going to tell you," I added. "I'm not asking you to take my side. I'm not asking you to make any decision about Claire. She told me you preferred to keep family separate from business." "There was no business." He looked down at his hands. "I need to talk to her." "Yes." At the porch steps, he turned back. "Did she know I was coming?" "No." "I'll tell her." That mattered to me. Daniel was not gathering facts to hold over her. He was trying to enter his own future with his eyes open. Whatever he did next belonged to him. Claire came home furious. "You told Daniel I lied." I answered his questions. "You could have said it was complicated." "It was simple enough when you introduced me." She stood in the kitchen doorway, still wearing her work badge. "He thinks he doesn't know me." "Then talk to him." "You have no idea what this is doing to us." "I know what you did to us." I regretted the sharpness as soon as I heard it, but I did not take it back. Claire's eyes filled. She turned away before the tears fell, and for a moment I saw the woman from the gas station, sitting in her car with the heat running. My body wanted to cross the kitchen and put an arm around her. I stayed beside the sink. Compassion can survive a boundary. That night, mine had to survive 10 feet of floor. Over the next 2 weeks, Claire toured studios. She did not ask me to go. She sent Daniel links, and he joined her for one visit. He offered, carefully, to discuss moving in together sooner than they had planned. Claire said no. I learned that because she told me one morning while spreading peanut butter on toast. "I don't want anyone saying I moved from my sister's house straight into a man's," she said. It was the first time she had used the words, "my sister's house," since the dinner. "Then a studio makes sense," I said. "You sound pleased." "I sound like someone who thinks you can choose a studio." She chose one on the second floor of a brick building near the post office. It was not glamorous. The kitchen had 3 drawers, one of which bumped the oven handle, and the bedroom looked over an alley where a restaurant kept its recycling bins. It was clean, within her budget, and available in 4 weeks. Claire stood in the center of the living room while the leasing agent checked a cabinet. "My sofa won't fit," she said. "You can measure it," Daniel replied. "I know it won't." "Then you can choose a smaller one." His voice was kind. It was also free of rescue. Claire signed the papers the following day. The deposit and utility setup took money she had expected to use for the wedding. For the first time, she and Daniel sat down with the full list of tasks and costs, without assuming I would remove half of them. They cut the custom favor boxes. They reduced the flower order. Claire sold the large sofa and bought a compact one secondhand. None of that ruined her life. It did make independence something she had to carry rather than something she could say. On moving day, she had rented a small truck and asked 2 coworkers to help. I had promised to carry one box, the carton with her good dishes, because she did not trust anyone else with them. I carried it from the guest room to the truck and set it behind the passenger seat. Near noon, only 3 plastic bins remained against the wall. "Those could stay here until after the wedding," Claire said. "They're mostly winter clothes." "They need to go with you." "There isn't much closet space. Then take one bin at a time and decide what fits." She looked around the room. The daybed was bare. Pale rectangles marked the places where her framed prints had protected the wall from sunlight. "You really need it empty?" "Yes." She pressed her lips together, then carried the first bin downstairs. At 4 o'clock, she came back from the truck and placed my house key on the pine dresser, not in my hand, not with a speech, just on the wood, beside a faint circle left by her water glass. I picked it up after she left. The front door closed. The truck started. For several minutes, I stood in the guest room listening to the engine fade down the street. Relief did not rush in. Space is not the same as peace. The room felt larger without her belongings, and smaller with every memory still inside it. I opened the window, stripped the borrowed mattress cover from the daybed, and carried it to the washer. That was all I did. 2 days later, I returned 4 overdue novels to the Ashford Library. I had found them beneath a box of Claire's wedding ribbon. At the checkout desk, I saw Marisol Vega, who had worked with me for 11 years in the management office. We had exchanged holiday cards since retirement and little else. "Ruth Mercer," she said. "I was beginning to think you had moved to a country without telephones." "Only across town for my own schedule." She held up a canvas tote with blue thread tangled around one handle. "I'm upstairs on Tuesdays now. Sewing circle. Very undisciplined. We spend as much time unpicking seams as making them." "That sounds familiar." "Come whenever you like. Or don't. I'll still speak to you at the grocery store." She took a small printed schedule from the desk and tucked it inside the top novel I was checking out. Then she asked whether I still grew tomatoes by the back steps. She did not ask why I looked tired. She did not know about Claire, Daniel, the key, or the empty room. I carried the schedule home and left it inside the novel on my nightstand. The invitation to Aunt Bev's retirement open house came the next Sunday. Bev was our mother's youngest sister, 68 and finally leaving the county records office after 4 decades. She wanted no formal speeches, just sandwiches, cake, and people moving through her house from 2 until 6. "Claire and Daniel are coming," she said on the phone. "Daniel's parents, too. I finally get to meet them." I looked through the kitchen doorway toward the hall. The guest room door stood open. I had not yet put anything back. "I'd like to come," I said. "Good, your family. That isn't a formal invitation, it's a command." After we hung up, I sent Claire a message. "I will be at Bev's open house. I will not answer to landlord, former landlord, or family friend. I won't discuss your divorce or our disagreement, but I will not repeat a false relationship." Her answer came 10 minutes later. "Nobody needs details. Please don't create a scene at Bev's." I wrote back, "Then we agree we did not agree." We had merely reached the place where agreement would have required her to choose. In her studio, wedding planning became smaller and more honest about its limits. Claire called the stationer herself and learned that cutting 24 invitations did not reduce the printing cost as much as she hoped. Daniel suggested electronic replies. They gave up the handmade favor boxes entirely and chose small paper packets from a local shop. The guest list went from 96 to 68. Claire called me once about the caterer. The quote says there may be a service charge, but your notes don't list the amount. It was not set when I spoke to them. The contact name is on the first page. Can you call? You already know her. No. It would take 5 minutes. Then it will take you 5 minutes. She hung up. 20 minutes later, she sent a message saying the charge was 18%. I replied with a thumbs up. I was glad she had the answer. I was also glad I had not obtained it for her. Daniel began favoring a smaller ceremony in September rather than the original June date. He said the move had made the schedule tight and there was no reason to pretend otherwise. Claire heard delay as failure. Daniel heard it as a decision. 3 days before Bev's open house, Claire came by for the last of her mail. She stood on the porch because she no longer had a key and I did not automatically invite her inside. Daniel's parents still think you rented me a room, she said. You have 3 days to correct that. Why does the word matter so much? Which word? She looked away. Sister? I asked. Landlord, rent, whatever. If they do not matter, use the true ones. You know what my divorce was like. Everyone had an opinion. Daniel's mother asked me on our second date whether I was financially stable. That was rude. She worries I'm looking for someone to take care of me. Are you? No. Then tell her you accepted help, recovered, and moved into your own apartment. Claire held the mail against her chest. Easy for you to say. It is not easy. It is just true. She left without answering. On the afternoon of Bev's open house, I wore a blue blouse Claire had once said made me look calm. I nearly changed when I remembered that, then decided the blouse had not done anything wrong. Bev's house was a low brick ranch with a wide front hall. Folding chairs lined the living room wall and a sheet cake occupied most of the dining table. I arrived at 2:30. Daniel was helping Bev's neighbor bring ice through the side door. Claire was arranging paper napkins beside the cake. You came, she said. I told Bev I would. For the first half hour, nothing happened. I spoke with 2 cousins. I carried an empty tray to the kitchen because I was going that direction. I did not take over. When Bev tried to hand me a list of people who had not arrived, I kissed her cheek and told her retirement began with not checking attendance. Daniel's parents were due at 3:30. At 3:20, Claire found me in the hallway near the coat closet. I need to ask you something, she said. All right. Her eyes went toward the living room. If Margaret asks about the house, can you just say the room was a rental? I felt the old instinct to lower my voice, soften my face, and help her across the difficult minute. No. Ruth, please, I will explain later. You have had weeks. This is Bev's day. Then let it be Bev's day. It will become about us if you correct me. I am not planning to announce anything. I am also not going to lie if I am asked. Daniel entered the hall behind her carrying a bag of ice. He stopped when he saw us. Claire turned, and I watched a choice pass across her face. She could have let the conversation end. She could have told him she was finally going to correct his parents. She could have walked into the kitchen and put the ice in the freezer. Instead, she said, "Can you please just be my former landlord for today?" Daniel did not look at me. He looked at Claire. The hallway was not crowded. Bev stood at the far end greeting a cousin. Music played softly from the living room. Nobody had gathered for a revelation. There was no proof in my purse and no speech waiting in my throat. I said, No, I am your sister. I gave you my guest room after your divorce. I won't call that rent, and I won't call myself less than family." Claire's face went still. I walked to Bev, touched her arm, and said, "I'm sorry, but I need to leave early. I'll call you tomorrow." She looked from me to the hallway. "Do you need me?" "No, enjoy your people." Then I left. Outside, Daniel's parents were getting out of their car. Margaret lifted a hand. I returned the wave and kept walking. If she asked why I was leaving, someone else would have to decide what truth to use. The drive home took 11 minutes. I did not turn on the radio. At a red light, my hands began to shake, so I pressed them flat against the steering wheel until it changed. Leaving did not feel victorious. I had not wanted to win a hallway. I had wanted my sister to say one ordinary noun. At home, I changed out of the blue blouse and hung it carefully in the closet. Then I sat at the kitchen table. The same table had held the move-out conversation, grocery bags, wedding ribbon, and the files I handed back. Now it held only my glass of water. My phone rang twice. The first call was from a cousin, the second was from Claire. I let both go unanswered. The next morning Bev called. "You are my niece," she said. "I am too old to pretend not to know that." "Thank you. I'm not asking for details." "Thank you for that too." She told me the cake had been too large and sent me home with none because I had left. I told her retirement had already made her selfish. She laughed. We spoke for 7 minutes about her plan to repaint the bathroom. That was the only family call I answered that week. Daniel did not call me. Claire sent 4 messages. The first said I had humiliated her. The second said I had made Daniel's parents think she was dishonest. The third asked me to tell Daniel that the arrangement had been complicated. The fourth arrived after midnight and said, "You got what you wanted." I replied the next morning. "I did not ask Daniel for anything. Please speak to him directly." 3 days later, Aunt Bev told me Daniel and Claire had postponed the wedding. I asked her not to give me updates unless Claire herself wanted me to know. "Daniel says it isn't about her needing help," Bev said before agreeing. "It is about whether she can tell the truth when it makes her uncomfortable." That sounded like Daniel. It was also his conclusion, not mine. Claire stayed in her studio. She went to work. She paid her utilities. She finished unpacking the bins I had refused to store. The wedding did not collapse in some dramatic shower of canceled flowers. The September date simply disappeared from the calendar. The caterer returned part of the deposit under the terms Claire and Daniel had already agreed to, and the rest covered work already done. The stationer printed nothing further. Daniel and Claire continued seeing each other, though less often. Those consequences were visible, but they were not mine to manage. I did not call Claire to make sure she had eaten. I did not ask Daniel what he planned. I did not explain our childhood to his parents or tell relatives which one of us had suffered more. For the first 3 weeks after Bev's open house, my hardest hour began at 5:30. That had been when Claire came home, dropped her purse on the kitchen chair, and told me some part of her day. Even when I had resented the dishes or the errands, I had listened for the front door. Now, the house remained still. I could have filled the hour by monitoring her. Instead, on the 4th Tuesday, I opened the library novel on my nightstand and found Marisol's schedule. The sewing circle met at 6 in an upstairs room with a long laminate table. I almost left when I saw 8 women already seated. Then Marisol looked up. "You found the country with telephones," she said. "Only on Tuesdays." She pointed to the empty chair beside her. No one asked me to explain why I had come. A woman named Paula was shortening curtains for her kitchen. Another was piecing together squares from old work shirts. Marisol was trying to put a new zipper in a canvas bag and had sewn one side backward. I brought my machine the next week. It had been boxed long enough for the foot pedal cord to hold the shape of a tight loop. The tension slipped on the first row of stitches. My hands went automatically toward the dial. "Let me see," Marisol said. For a second, I wanted to tell her I could manage. Then I moved my chair aside. She found a thread caught behind the bobbin case. Paula held a small flashlight. I watched them work on something that belonged to me, and I let the help arrive without turning it into debt. Afterward, the librarian asked whether I would keep the supply cabinet organized because I had once mentioned managing buildings. "I can set it up tonight," I said, "but after that we should rotate." The word came out easily. We made a 4-name schedule. Nobody objected. Nobody praised my strength. Marisol wrote her name under mine and asked whether I wanted coffee. I began a quilted cushion for the reading chair in the former guest room. The fabric was deep green with narrow cream lines. On Tuesday evenings, I worked on it at the library. On Thursday evenings, I read at home instead of checking my phone. 2 months after Bev's open house, Claire sent a message. "I miss how things used to be. You were the person who always helped me out." I don't understand why one bad introduction had to erase everything. I read it twice. She was reaching toward me, but she was still reaching past the word. I wrote, "If you want to speak to me as your sister, ask me directly. I will not discuss the wedding or explain us to anyone for you." Her reply came an hour later. "I can't talk when you make everything conditional." I did not answer. That evening I met Marisol in a bookstore cafe before a reading. She complained that the zipper in her canvas bag still leaned left. I told her it had developed character. We shared a piece of lemon cake because neither of us wanted a whole one. My phone stayed in my purse. There was no reconciliation by autumn. Claire and Daniel were still together as far as I knew, but there was no new wedding date. Claire sent me a birthday card signed "Love Claire." She did not write sister. I sent her a brief thank you. I did not close the path. I stopped paving it for her. By October, I was ready to finish the room. I moved the sewing table back under the west window. Marisol helped me lift the machine onto it, then left before dinner because she had promised to call her brother. I returned the reading chair to the lamp and placed the green cushion against its back. The pine dresser stayed where it had always been. I put fresh sheets on the daybed, not for Claire and not for anyone expected, but because a guest room could still be a guest room without becoming somebody else's permanent claim. The closet held my fabric on the left and extra blankets on the right. The 3 drawers that had once held Claire's sweaters now held thread, scissors, and the library books I meant to read next. I did not remove every trace of her. One pale square remained on the wall where her largest print had hung. Paint fades at its own pace. Late that afternoon, the room filled with the amber light I had missed. I sat at the machine and finished the hem on a blue table runner. Then I switched off the machine, moved to the chair, and opened my book. From there I could see the doorway, the hallway beyond it, and the front door at the far end of the house. All 3 were quiet. The daybed was ready for anyone I invited. The chair held me. The sewing table held the work I had chosen. When the sun dropped below the roofs across the street, I turned on the reading lamp and closed the door halfway, exactly as far as I wanted it.